Very pleasant good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Magandang umaga po, magandang tanghali, magandang hapon, at magandang gabi. Welcome to our Chronicles, and this is Rita Gadi. Before I introduce our guest, who will actually be a regular in many ways, we were together some time back, many years back. We were together all the way from 1986. Oh my goodness, that's a long time ago. But I will introduce him much later. But first, the title of our program is Truth to Tell. Over the past year and a half or so, from the time our Marcos Jr. entered into the office of the presidency, we have done all the readings that we are normally doing on a day-to-day basis, and that is pronouncements coming from the palace. It is very important because after 37 years, we have another Marcos now heading our government. This is not by way of comparing because there is really no level of, there is no horizon that we could utilize to compare except perhaps for the decibels and the tone of voice between the two Marcoses, the elder Marcos and then the junior Marcos, because even in the delivery of their speeches, it's really very different. I was just listening to the address of Ferdinand Edralin Marcos in the House of Congress in America, and then I also listened to our own junior president with his inaugural address, and very, very different in the sense that the elder Marcos would have one sentence that would occupy 20 minutes, and the period would be at the end of one long paragraph. Whereas the younger junior Marcos, as you would have noticed by now, you could see that and you could understand how his sentences come briefly and, of course, with a lot of emphasis on the pronouncements that are being made. So this is not by way of comparing, but it is important that recently, I think this was, well, according to my diary, sometime last August 14th, the Office of the President, together with the Presidential Office for Communications, signed a memorandum of agreement. And this is very timely because here it is called the Media Literacy Campaign, meaning it is about time that we get into the substance and the essence of a lot of statements that are being made, either by government, by several other individuals, opinion writers, and everybody else who enters into what is now known as social networking or the social media. This is, you know, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have several others, social network applications where you can just log in and post whatever it is you want to say. And what usually happens is we can't distinguish what is true, what is false. You have headlines, for instance, on mainstream media, which says this person so-and-so was arrested and is now incarcerated. And then you read in social media, oh, he was already liberated, he was already freed because his cases have been dropped. So when you look at this, it's difficult. But that's exactly what we're trying to talk about this afternoon. Truth to tell. And so I'd like to introduce, although he needs no introduction, my good friend who hails from Mindanao, also where I come from, an island which is still floating out there, waiting not just to be discovered, but to be fully developed. He has been with Philippine politics from the time of Methuselah, if you would call it that. We are about the same age, so we go very way back. And that's precisely why we source ourselves, as far as the truth is concerned, from what? For about 60 years ago or so, or by the time we were already in kindergarten or grade 1. So I'd like to introduce a once upon a time member of parliament, governor likewise, an astute politician, and one of the finest minds that you can find this side of the planet. My good friend, HOMOBONO ADAZA. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening.
Good day, Rita. It's good to be back in your program.
Yes, I'm also happy that every once in a while we can be together, especially because certain concerns are best described or best talked about from the point of view of people who lived 100 years ago. So that not by way of comparing Bono, but trying to find out, does truth change in time? What was true before, is it possible that it is no longer true today? So we talk about many pronouncements that are being made, not just by politicians, but by everybody else who goes into posting, as we've said, in social networking. Truth to tell, Bono, how was it then during our time?
Well, during our time, even the politicians were afraid to tell a lie because he can be unmasked. The
Uh-huh.
people will be brave enough to unmask him. That's
Okay.
why when I got involved in politics,
Mm-hmm.
since my father was in politics, my father-in-law was in politics, my auntie was in politics, but there was one thing certain. Uh, I observed from my parents, my parents-in-law, that truth was very important.
That is something which I think should be repeated every hour of the day. Truth is very important. And during our time, it was dangerous and it was
It,
risky
it
for,
has something,
yeah, for public
it's important
officials. Yeah.
because it has reference to your character and your integrity. If you don't see the truth, you don't have any integrity.
Wow.
So be careful, because the term that he used in our place was bansagon.
Which
Bansagon.
means
Yeah, that's the term he used. When you tell a lie, you are violating your bansagon. Don't
character.
ever, don't ever do that.
Okay. Those
He
are
was telling,
very important words. Character. It will reflect on your character. Now, here
yes,
we are in this stage, at this time, when just about many things that we hear and read have no way of being verified as being the truth.
correct.
So yes, this is not only causing confusion, but exactly the question I had earlier. What happened to the truth? It made the detour somewhere, it disappeared somewhere. Can anybody just have anything to say without that being reflective of the kind of person that this person is?
It went back to Nazi Germany, Rita.
Oh my goodness.
The propaganda man of Adolf Hitler was someone known as Joseph Goebbels.
Yes.
Joseph Goebbels said, "A lie said once remains a lie. A lie repeated several times becomes the truth." That's why in our generation, they must have read a lot of Joseph Goebbels, because they keep on repeating a lie, thinking that it will become the truth. Well, you know, uh, Hitler and Goebbels were unmasked, and I was wondering why they have come, they have come back suddenly in our time. We have a
Wait,
lot of liars all over the place. It's not only politicians. Well,
that's exactly the problem we have, and possibly that's the reason why the government itself has decided to launch this media literacy campaign to be able to help our readers, listeners, or whatever else gets into the field of communication to be able to decipher and to know exactly what is the truth. But that's it. How do we know what is true from what we read, what we hear? Let's take for instance mainstream media. Usually the source of our information comes from the dailies, so the newspapers, so the broadsheets. That was then. That was during our time, Bono. We waited for the morning papers at 5 o'clock in the street corner or wherever it is being dropped, so that we'll know exactly what's happening to the world. Nowadays, I don't think people read anymore newspapers. So, but nonetheless, you still have it there. Sinasabi nga sa palengke, pagka ang presyo ng bigas ganito lang, sasabihin sa iyo ng tindera, ay sa dyaryo ka na lang bumili. So that is already a question of what is in the newspaper and what is reality. Reality is not exactly what it is as true, but there you have a way of comparing. So that is it. There is a necessity now to be able to look into all of this coming out on Facebook, on Twitter, on mainstream media, on radio, on television, and then you wonder, what is true?
You know, Rita, I was just asking myself when I was listening to the second son of the president. He was saying that prices have stabilized. You know, at the time when he said, at the very moment that he said prices have stabilized, including gasoline, you know, before I was listening, the price of gasoline in the gasoline station where I bought my unleaded was 51, 51 pesos and 25 centavos. You know, after he delivered his speech, I went back to the gasoline station. It turned out to be 52.95 already. You know, there is a great span of difference already between what he said and the price. Okay, they said that the price of rice has already stabilized. My God, my driver was telling me, sir, that's not true. What do you mean it's not true? Now, the price of rice, I was instructed by mom to buy rice, and it's several times higher than when I bought it last week. You
Okay.
see,
Yeah. Bono, here we come to the use of the words. When the word stabilized is used, exactly what meaning does it have at that particular use of that word? So stabilization, or the price of a certain commodity has stabilized. In what manner has it stabilized? Perhaps the use of the word itself will have a different meaning if you look at the reality on the ground. But it could also have a meaning when you say that the stabilization efforts are actually underway, and that is the stabilization at a certain degree. So, pag
right?
sinabi mong mataas ang presyo, nag-stabilize dun sa presyo mataas. You see, the manner by which the word is used could actually be a referral to the statement being made. But that is just one of the pronouncements. There are so many others. Recently, you had what is this? The Senate president who announced coming into the conflict, or supposedly conflict, between what is happening in the South China Sea, when he says that we should boycott Chinese products. I don't know whether this was an emotional outburst, a senatorial prerogative to say something that is of such a nature. Was it a declaration of a policy that will have to be undertaken because of the position that he holds as speaker, as speaker of the I'm sorry, as Senate president? So where is this coming from when he says that we have to boycott Chinese products? Is that to be taken seriously, or is just simply an outburst? And then we go back to what you said. Is that reflective of the character of the person? Not the
Yeah,
office he represents, but his character. So, there.
you know, I wrote an article, no, in my Diliman way, you know, in Bono ADAZA, no, Bono ADAZA.
Yes.
I mentioned several suggestions on what the government should do. Because to begin with, we don't have weapons. No, we need to wage war with China. We don't have. All we need is brilliance in terms of our brains and of our tongue.
Do we
The
have that too?
Filipinos in that reference, I'm talking about the past, no? When Marcos and I, when the old Marcos and I talked, we were always talking on the level of high intelligence and persuasive language. No? So, sabi ko, we cannot, we are not in a position to wage in a war, but we are in a position. We are in a position to terrify these people in terms of the use of our intelligence, our language. And I mentioned several suggestions. You know, when the Chinese vessels went to the Indonesian territories, the president of Indonesia rode on the Indonesian vessels and told them to get back. And they were all scared. tayo, somebody promised that he will go on a ski trip and plant the Filipino flag in the Scarborough Shoal. And the trip never materialized.
Yeah,
The
we
next
had
thing I heard, he fell from his motorcycle. Ano ba yan? You
anyway.
know,
Yeah, that's really something which we have to consider, Bono. As you were saying, there is a certain value that will have to be given. But you say that we cannot defend ourselves physically or militarily because we do not have the either the equipment or the military material that is well advanced to be competitive with the rest of those countries that will have more advanced defense mechanisms. But there is also the use of the language itself. Remember
yes,
how our Philippine Revolution began with a novel. You had the words of Jose Rizal, for instance, the Indios
yes,
Bravos in La
yes,
Solidaridad, in the writings when they were overseas. Some of them were studying, some of them were just there to be able to enlighten themselves with what was happening in Europe. And it was the use of words, which was the strongest weapon that could be utilized. But here we are so clumsy and so careless with the words that we use. The example I cited from the Senate president who said, boycott everything that's Chinese made. My goodness, it's a good thing nobody came up to his rostrum and started removing his, well, whatever it is that was made in China. So for that matter, that is where truth to tell, Bono, words too could be used as a very strong, not a weapon, but a very strong manner by which we could determine the kind of stand that we have. Foreign policy is one of this. As you've mentioned, it's not just a matter of just showing whatever military material we have. But then again, here we are with the use of words. So, what kind of words are being utilized today so that they are not just recklessly said, but also ridiculously pronounced? And that is where the confusion comes. Truth
yeah.
is nowhere in any of this.
That one point, for instance, the president was saying that our foreign policy is we are not friends, we are friends, but not enemies of anyone. No, that's not the correct statement of foreign policy because China is waging a war against us in the West Philippine Sea. When they do not they prevent our fishermen from fishing, they shoot water cannons at our own vessels. That's a state of war. There is no declaration, but it's a state of war. The problem with our vessels is they don't have strong water cannons also to hit the vessels of the Chinese Coast Guard. Why not? So I'm intending to write a letter, Rita, since the president is not interested, a letter to the Secretary of National Defense and to the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces next week that if it's money, according to money is the problem, 100 million to acquire ships, militia ships. So, okay, they need 100 million. Okay, my clients have that kind of money, but
Wow.
it needs the help of government to get them out from banks here and banks here in the Philippines. The government will make money, my client will make money, I will make money. 1 month, the maximum limit, their problem of money will be solved. They don't have to wait for Congress for appropriation of 100 million for the vessels. My client is willing to give more than that because they have more money than $100 million.
Oh, wow.
They
Yeah.
have more than that.
Okay,
And
we'll wait for that, Mono, because if that is indeed already on the table, then you must write to the president regarding this, because that's exactly where we're at as far as logistics is concerned. But let's get
yes,
back to how we can be able to help our viewers, our listeners, those who go into social networking, those who click their mobile phones and look at what the latest news is and all of this, anywhere where you can get a source of information basic things like, for instance, what do I do if I get sick with this kind of a disease, this kind of illness? Where do I go? What can I avail of as far as benefits and services are concerned? These are everyday concerns which need the kind of information, the true information. We have, for instance, a Nobel Prize winner who who said that there is something possibly very wrong with the way we have handled vaccines and all of this with the recent COVID that the whole world was infected with. So you have all of this coming out, and that is again the question: what is true? And how can we be able, we in media, you and I, we who go with broadcast in this manner, how can we help our viewers, our listeners, our young people, those who are interested, anybody for that matter, who has access to communication or data or information coming out of all sorts of avenues, like as I said, like mostly from social networking. What kind of tools can we help them with so that they could know that what they're reading, what they're listening to, what they're digesting is true?
Well, we have to rely. Government does not provide us with the accurate information.
Why
Nothing much
so?
comes out from the government because the situation is different from the ground from what they're saying.
Okay.
Like the price of gasoline is stabilized, it's rising. And somebody said that by the end of this year, the price of gasoline will be 90 pesos.
So how do we check this? Sometimes, most often for that matter, it is not that they are not telling us exactly what is true, but they come out with very general statements so that we will still have to decipher where it's coming from. I'll give an example. For instance, one cabinet secretary said that his department is doing a high frequency monitoring of the prices of basic commodities, especially of food products. Okay, now that's a general statement, but where do we go from there to find out exactly where this high frequency monitoring is happening? You know, a long time ago, very long time ago, I remember how the NEDA came up with a very large study and something like an atlas of the different provinces where you have, for instance, the data on the kind of soil, on the kind of products, on the kind of food and fish, food from the ground and fish from the rivers that could be obtained per province. So if we can look at that, but that was what, 57 years ago or 50 years ago, then you can verify that something is being monitored because of that data. But we don't have that registry anymore. The field, the farm and the fishery registry of exactly where the vegetables are coming from, that's closest to where the greater population is located. So again, as I've said, the verification is sometimes where the difficulty arises.
Yes. That's what Rita, my
Yes.
verification is I go to the malls. They tell me
Okay.
that everything is stabilized. All right. I check. Milk. I was buying milk the week before, costing only 91. The day after, it was 99. And now, it's 150.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, Bono, I'm losing your audio. Anyway, so as Bono, yeah, Bono, I'm losing your audio. You were saying that the prices have risen from a couple of days from the time you started checking, and you said that is where you would find what
The
is being,
truth.
yeah, okay. The truth is the reality that you see. But
Yes.
yeah, but beyond that is we also have to find out why so. There has to be something behind it that makes the prices go higher, because then we would at least understand that something will have to be done, not just on the pricing, not just on the merchants that are selling these products, but in the production itself. That's why I was talking of the registry of the farmlands and the fisheries.
That's why they should check. No, my suggestion there is really, other than monitoring, at this stage in time, the price is above ground now. Now it has skyrocketed. No, atmospheric. Next week it will be stratospheric.
Oh
It
my
will be beyond
goodness.
beyond the reach of ordinary people like me. My God, like I was buying feeds for my cats. The feeds for my cats was 110 per sack. Now it's 1,100 pesos. Now it's 1,450 pesos. My golly, I cannot buy for my cats, and my cats are mewing all over the place. And these are cats, Rita, not 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 human beings yet.
So you can imagine what it's like when you have to feed several human mouths, actually. But that's exactly the question that we're asking now, insofar as verifying where is all of this coming from. There is not just because there are statements being made regarding the prices of certain basic commodities or other even luxuries for that matter, but where do we go insofar as finding out the reason why there is this discrepancy and why it's being said? You see, that is precisely why I think they had to launch a media literacy campaign, so that we will be able to decipher all the data that we are receiving from different sources, and for us also to be able to know the truth regarding this. As you said, you go to the mall and that's a different thing from what is being said and what is actually there. But that's just one example, Bono. There are many other things that we have to not just verify, but to accept as false and as true. So many people write about other things which also affect our lives. Like, for instance, they're having several laws that are being passed in Congress. What is of relevance to our lives as far as that's concerned? Is it true? Or is it something that will just benefit a district or a certain place? So these are things which we have to look into. During,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
anyway.
Basics, Rita.
Yeah,
I
okay.
want to talk basics. You're talking about legislation.
Uh-huh.
The president keeps on traveling for investments with
Yes, Bono. Yes, the travels of the president, they have already been summarized in many ways.
with
And
the money.
yes,
Money is not used for terrorism, for human trafficking, etc., etc. But why keep the money for a long time there?
uh-huh. Yes, Bono, continue. Yes, we're listening. You were talking about the need for foreign investments to come in to be able to help us.
5,000,
Yeah, pardon?
5,000, 5,000, $5 billion with a
Okay.
book of complete projects for Mindanao.
Uh-huh.
I called the chairman of the AMLA, who is residing in our subdivision. So I called him, hey, Philip, I have a client who will deposit $5 billion, and I hope it will not take long with AMLA. And he said, Bono, that's a staggering amount. You need the clearance of the president. By God, complete projects, and I have to get the clearance of the president for my client. It's designed for university building, for hospitals, for development of oil in the Liguasan Mars, for construction of an airport, for construction of a pier. And then I can't even get any clearance except I have to see the president.
But of course, Bono, because all of these are major products, programs. The clearance from the Office of the President, it's an executive action. So infrastructure and all of this that you're proposing will have to pass through the cabinet itself, because the different departments are the ones that's supposed to be taking care of this. But that is prospective, Bono. In other words, you will still have to get the go signal to have all of these finances coming in. I think you've talked about this for some years
Yes.
already.
No, but my
Yeah.
suggestion is they should do away with AMLA.
What is
What they
AMLA? Just so long as our people will understand
Is
this.
anti-money laundering law.
Okay,
They
anti-bandit.
should
Uh-huh.
they should get rid of this. And then what they should do is every time money comes into the Philippines, tax it 10%. Tax 10% straight to the government. And they will sign an affidavit that they will not use it for terrorism, for human trafficking, for rebellion, for conspiracy, to commit a coup. And then that if they violate it, all this money and their monies will be confiscated by the government, including them. That's it.
Okay, so we'll wait for that, Mono, because as I've said, that's a perspective. And we hope through these programs that, people in authority would be able to look into this particular proposal because it's there, actually. And as you've said, infrastructure that could go and could really benefit our island, Mindanao particularly. But here we are, being affected by many of the things that are all over. I'd like to go back again to that particular question. Like when you read something on Facebook, on Instagram, and all of these social networking applications, and then you also hear what government officers are saying, and then you have also presidential announcements. So it's difficult for the ordinary person to really determine and to decipher which is true. Of course, you know that what is being said by government should be true. As you said, it reflects on the character of the government itself. But if there are other applications in social networking which says otherwise, these are not just oppositionists, but these are those that will contradict what is being said. One example is the South China Sea, where you have so many already talking about it and so many kibitzing about it. And so again, you will ask, ano ba talagang totoo? May gera na ba talaga? Yung tubig ba na ginamit laban sa mga fishermen? Declaration of war na ba yun? Etc. Again, we go back to that question, which perhaps that particular program, which the President has recently launched, is so important. Paano matutulungan ang ating mga nakikinig sa radyo, nagbabasa ng periodiko, tumitingin sa mga iba't ibang lumalabas sa kanilang cellphone, paano malalaman kung ano talaga ang katotohanan? That's the question, truth to tell.
alam mo, Rita, there are many things that people in this country, not just in government, they should tell the truth. Even who is their father, who is their mother, which is important. Determining when they file their certificates of candidacy, why are they registering the wrong mother and father?
Oh my God.
I can understand that laughter.
I know. We can laugh at it because some also changed their names, and
but
and
the
even even their
problem-
status, for instance,
No, okay lang yung changes of marriage status, but
But
not
the
telling
change
the
of
truth.
gender, even, Bono, is something what is true,
No,
There's
okay
a-
lang yan, change of gender, but not telling who is their father and their mother. Naming somebody else. Mali yan, hindi ba? That's a mistake. That's not telling the truth.
Exactly. So when we ask that question, what is the source of truth? Where do we find the verification of what is being said, what is being written, what is, all of this? Somewhere over the past so many decades, the truth does not seem to have much value anymore. It's like if you can be able to defend your lie, you don't even have to repeat a lie 1,000 times or 100 times. You just say the lie and you say it well, and people will believe it.
you know my problem, Rita. I am glad that I am with you in this program because my problem, some people come to see me. I
Yes.
don't know why, for what reason. Imagine somebody telling me that he's President Marcos,
Yes, yes, you
and
said
then
that. Yes.
and then three other people telling me that they are Tiborcio Villamor Marcos,
Yes.
and they have so much money. I said, who among these three is telling the truth? But
Yes.
I just learned later that there are eight Tiborcio Villamor Marcos. And who is the genuine one? We cannot determine. The government in matters like this should inquire into this problem because it involves the country.
That's
These
exactly
people,
why, yeah, that's exactly why the president launched this program.
oh,
He had a, well, you can call it, perhaps it's a fancy name for it, but that's exactly what the intention was, media literacy campaign. And
but,
as the Secretary of Information was saying, we have to help even, especially our youth, especially those, the young people, how to be able to really determine, because now we have instant information, instant communication, but how do we verify if this
the
is true
truth.
or not? Yes.
Yeah, the
To tell.
president will, I hope he does not regret
Pardon?
creating this. I hope the president does not regret signing this memorandum.
Perhaps he found it most necessary at this stage because now,
Yeah,
other than social networking, Bono, we are now going to be facing artificial intelligence, which we are actually using already in many ways,
okay,
GPS and all of
okay.
that. Then you have
But
chat GPT, and that's it. These are
but
machines, robots that are actually feeding us.
but Rita,
Yes,
the president will be asked a question that he may have a difficult time answering.
which is?
I don't like to mention it. That's number one. There are three questions. First, he was saying that he said that he doesn't know the existence of the Marcos wealth because he has not even seen a single bar of gold. Why is he saying that? Some people will ask him, why? While Mrs. Marcos keeps on saying that they have so much money and she wants to give 90% of this to the Filipino people, and social media, very bold letters in social media. Mrs. Marcos wants to give the 90% of their wealth, but Bongbong objects, BBM objects.
Yeah, okay,
Question.
that's one concern. What's
Oh.
the second one? Anyway,
Uh,
yeah, question.
I will ask that question when I see the president.
Okay, but Bona,
Is-
questions like that have risen way, way back. I mean, even before the presidency of Marcos Jr., during the time of the old man, that has already been raised even at the time when he was in Honolulu. A lot of reporters went there and asked him, where is the Marcos gold, etc. And he has also written about this in many ways, in many speeches likewise. So that is something that belongs to that level of the family and the wealth that they are supposed to have. And the questions surrounding that are still hanging at bay, so to speak, until there will actually be the actual transmission, as you said. You yourself are you have the knowledge regarding one aspect of this. So
uh,
we cannot speak of what you call hypothetical in such a way, but
yeah, but that question will be asked of the
it's been
president.
asked many times. Yes.
What is the answer and what is the truth?
Well,
Is the pres-
there were
is Mrs.
also,
Mar
as the
is Miss
questions arise, so does an answer come. So if you have 100 questions that were already elevated on their level, they've had 100
hundred answer?
answers. And so again, truth to tell, that's exactly what I'm reading
Okay,
on to.
okay. I like that.
Yes. that is precise. But that, as I said, is personal domestic concern
No,
of the Marcos
no,
family.
no, Rita, that's not a personal domestic concern because Mrs. Marcos says that she will give 90%
Yes,
of the
but
Marcos wealth to the country.
yeah, but that's Marcos wealth. That has an adjective to it. This is not Filipino wealth. This is not Maharlika wealth. This is
Oh.
not the wealth of the Filipino people. This is Marcos wealth. So it is domestic. I mean, it is a family. It is a family concern. As I've said, 100 questions have been raised to them, and they've given 100 answers too. So that's the truth to tell. We shall wait. We shall wait for the time when the time is right. Ecclesiastes already has said it, a time for throwing away and a
Yeah.
time for gathering. So we will
Yeah.
wait. Now I think is the time for gathering because we need exactly what is being gathered. And then we have a time for throwing away the false and
Yeah.
gathering the
Okay.
truth. Yes.
Rita, you're a friend of Mrs. Marcos. Am I also a friend of Mrs. Marcos? So tell Mrs. Marcos that I'm asking the question.
For those of you who are listening to us now, and perhaps this is being replayed by many others too, I've seen a lot of replays regarding this and a sharing. Bono and I go a long way. So when we say that we are friends of the Marcoses, oh my goodness, this goes as far back as 1965 when they first were in the horizon of national politics, and that was when President Marcos decided to run for the presidency of our country. So I was already then part of that campaign period, whatever it is, not as a journalist, but as a friend in a way, through my father. And Bono was also already around because of his father too. So we belong to a generation which has seen the movement of this family in our political horizon. And together with the movement of that family is this huge amount of wealth, whether it is in gold, in other certificates, in deposits, in whatever assets. And all of this are awaiting, as Bono said, the time when there will be a gathering. So, but beyond that, let's go to the day-to-day concerns, the things that Bono sees in the mall, the reality of where we are going to get the next meal,
Right.
payment for our checkup, for medical checkup, for our medicines and so forth. But then, of course, other things like a child who wants to enter med school and not many scholarships are being offered for these higher disciplines. Many of these concerns that affect many of us. And then let's go back now to the basics, like food on the table. We were mentioning earlier, Bono, that at one time we had a registry of the fields that are planting what kind of products. And then we have a registry for the fisheries that are in our rivers, in our bays, in our lakes, in our oceans, and wherever there is water that the fish can thrive, fish and other sea creatures can thrive that we can eat. I don't know if that has been sustained and that we can go back to it, because that is one way of verifying if indeed our agriculture has been and our fisheries have been taken care of over the past 100 years. Was it 100 years? How long have we been independent? It's from 1946.
More
no,
than 100 years.
Yeah, for about
1946. More than
okay,
100 years.
146. So these are the platforms on which the foundations of our country ought to rise, you know, like we don't have enough jobs, but then we have the open fields where we could work so that we could eat, but we don't do this. So this is the truth to tell, which we have to face. And that is precisely why this media literacy that the president has launched is so important. Because if you try to put them logically, one after the other, saan kukuha ng pagkain? Dun sa dagat at dun sa bukid. Sino ang magtatanim? Paano kukunin? Sino magbebenta? Saan dadalahin? Basic questions. And then you go into education. Now we have public education, which is free. Then you have also other years of studies. Now they're reviewing the K to 12 thing, which was completely copied from some foreign country. I can say this firsthand because I've come in contact with a person who was translating the foreign language of this K to 12 into English so that we can understand and apply it. Now they see that there's something not quite right. It's quite awry as far as that's concerned. But Bono,
Rita,
that's it. Let us
I
look.
no,
Yeah.
I agree with the president in launching this program,
Okay.
but it should start from the members of the cabinet, from the senators, from the congressmen, the governors, mayors. This should be the first one who should be educated
I salute you
because
for that. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
the
Yes.
most of the time they're not telling the truth. So first, I salute the president for creating this program, but let's start from a top down so that we down here will know who is telling the truth and who is not.
Very good. Very well said. I think that already underlines truth to tell. We are we have elected people who have put aside, number one, conscience. They have their consciences sit in a corner, so it doesn't bother them whether they are doing right or wrong, whether what they're performing is good for the people or good for their pockets. And then they've also put aside character. You mentioned this, Bono. That is so important. If we look at 320 members of the lower chamber, and then we look at the 24 members of the higher chamber, I don't know why they have lower or higher, as though these were seating arrangements in a movie house where you have balcony, lodge, and orchestra. So I would just like to think that it is just the seating arrangement because, as you said, what is between their ears makes no difference of where they're
No,
seated.
the upper and lower house, Rita, refers to the old legislative building.
Okay.
The Senate was on the third floor. The Congress was on the second floor.
So we don't use
That's
that
why,
anymore. It sounds
yeah,
derogatory when you say lower
yeah,
chambers
it
320.
should be House of Representatives.
Exactly. No longer that the adjective that goes with it. Anyway, so that is what we have, Bono. You were talking about, well, how many members of cabinet do we have? I think we have 24 or so. But we have a larger number of legislators, both in the House of Congress and in the Senate. And this is where precisely, truth to tell, that particular word which you have come up with is character. Because the statements they make, which are not true, is reflective of their character. But we put them there. We elected them into office. We voted them into that position where they can, as you say, continue with that kind of advocacy of saying what is not true. So there.
Yeah, we're in complete agreement with this. I hope one day we'll have creatures in the House, in the cabinet, in the different capital city halls who have character and integrity. You know, one time, this during the Cory years, when Enrile and Ramos pulled that coup, we were in Cebu. In Cebu, I was seated beside Cory at Fuentes Mena. We're campaigning for boycott. We didn't know that Enrile and Ramos were already there. You know, Cory was asking me, have you talked to my brother? I said, which one is this? Piping. No, I'm talking about Don Pepe. I want to cite this, though it might sound like I'm blowing my own horn, but it came from Cory. It didn't come from me. So, why should I meet Don Pepe? Because he told me that if I have an insoluble problem, I should only meet one person, consult one person. Who is that person? You. Did you ask him why? I asked Cory, did you ask Don Pepe why you should consult me when you have an insoluble problem? You know, the answer was quick. Said, because Don Pepe told me that you are the opposition leader who is brilliant and with integrity and character. That's what he said. Well, we have parted ways a long time ago, but I still remember what she told me at Fuentes Mena, because it mentions character and integrity, which is more important than anything else. You know? And my father told me that, and it has been my guide stone all my life. Character and integrity, because
Exactly.
I've had offers, oppositions of millions of dollars. But at the sacrifice of my integrity, I said, no, because my father will rise from the grave and choke me to death. That I cannot afford. I
Yes.
think I'm saying that so the younger people should learn that integrity and character is important, more important than getting elected,
Yes.
more important than being president of the Philippines. They should read that in John F. Kennedy's Profiles in Courage.
Yes.
One senator said, I'd rather be alone than be president if I retain my character and integrity. That's
Exactly.
important for the young. The young should learn that.
Very important.
Very, very
Ladies and
important.
gentlemen, you have just heard exactly what is the tool for all of you to understand where the truth lies. It lies in character. Bono was talking of his past, as he said. He was recognized as the true opposition because he was a man of integrity, because he had the character. He stood by principles, not by the popularity of his name or his position, but of principles. So that is where we can speak of this, Bono ADAZA. Myself, perhaps without, as Bono said, without having to carry my own chair, I was covering the office of President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos. And my physical position in the palace was just a few yards away from the study room to wait if there could be any presidential announcements, or if there could be some statements that have to be made, or if there would be a cabinet member or an official that he is talking with that needs to be broadcast. That was the position I held under contract, not as a government employee, but under contract with the National Media Production Center. So, when Marcos was taken out of the palace and was brought to exile, there were questions being asked. I was being ridiculed, I was being lambasted and all. And yet, I could not even complete the payment of my housing loan at the time. And physically, on a day-to-day basis, I was just a few yards away from the study room of one of the strongest leaders our country has ever had.
The best.
So, when I was interviewed and asked, bakit wala kang pambayad sa bahay mo na sheriff ka na? You were in Malacanang for how many years? So what do I answer? What could you answer? Because I did not avail of the position I held then for any personal reason. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening to us, listen well. We can speak of this and say the truth to tell comes from the character of the person. Look at all the people that are now in government, people now that are supposed to serve you, from which your taxes are going to pay them, and ask, do they have the integrity of character? So when President Marcos Jr. launched this, that is precisely what disturbs him at this stage, at the very early stage of his administration. Kailangan tulungan ang tao para malaman ang katotohanan, ngunit saan manggagaling ang katotohanan na yan? Sa mga bibig ng mga taong nilagay natin sa pwesto, ngunit walang integridad. That is the question. Truth to tell. So, if Bono ADAZA talks that way, remember, he stood as the opposition when they were canvassing the votes for President Marcos. And an asterisk was put every time a canvas of a certain region was questioned. And yet, in spite of those asterisks, Ferdinand Edralin Marcos still won the presidency. But Bono ADAZA stood his ground as the opposition, and it has been such since then. He also was a member of parliament, and again, he could testify to the fact that at the time when the parliament was established by President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos, they did not have the pork barrel or the PDF or the money that was going to their pockets. They simply legislated. Okay, so here I am coming with this program, the Rita Gadi Chronicles. Well, I can tell you straight to the camera and to all of you listening and watching, there is not a single centavo that I am being paid for as far as this program is concerned. Ang dami-dami nagsasabi, naku, ang yaman-yaman na siguro kasi ganyan-ganyan, blogging, etc. No, sir. Wala yan. Okay, so be that as it may, stand ground because Bono and I are able to stand on this, on our credibility, on our credentials, and on the quality of our characters. Truth to tell. Mahalaga na isipin ng ating mga kabataan ngayon, panindigan ninyo ang katotohanan. That is so important. So Bono, social media and its mass audience and all of this where people read so many things, opposition or otherwise, even if you oppose the things that are being done by government, be sure that what you say is true. That is
Correct.
how important it is.
And Rita,
Yes.
I'd like to quote somebody who
Yes.
is a friend on the level of the heart and of the mind.
Uh-huh.
Is Robert Kennedy. People see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not.
Why not? Precisely. Bono and I are both dreamers. We also write poetry in many ways, as often as we have not just the time, but whenever the words surface from our hearts. And it has to be written down because precisely through the silence of words, we also communicate. Bono, thank you very much for having joined me. It's been very interesting how difficult the truth is sometimes, but there are no two sides of it. And it is very easy to tell. It is only evil that complicates.
Yeah,
So-
thanks Rita for inviting me. God
Yeah,
bless.
God
And
bless.
God bless
Yeah.
the Philippines.
I'll have you again sometime when we have some other important and interesting and fascinating concerns. But we have some reactions coming from those who viewed us. Netvex, magandang hapon po. Rolly Parano, good day. The vaccine is known to have mercury. The government should not make it mandatory. Nakita mo, lumalabas na lahat yan. The virus has not been isolated, so it is not yet a vaccine. Yes, it takes years for you to be able to determine if a vaccine is effective. Simple economic supply and demand. No, it is simple greed in many ways. For the pharmaceutical mafia has already been overexposed. Have a blessed day po ahead, ma'am. Good afternoon. Pink waving hand, pink, whatever this means. Marvin Rosalado, magandang hapon po, Ma'am Gadi. Thank you so much for your love and care to our beloved country. OPM Love Songs Sanchez, you're right, Ma'am. That's Marcus Wealth. Lean Mutasarco, watching from Bacolod City, J-Con, etc. and all. So the others who have been sending their messages, we'll tackle them if there are questions in the next program. But meanwhile, thank you very much for having joined us. This is the Chronicles of Rita Gadi.
God bless.
God bless, Bono.
Bum 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 ba-ba-da-ba-dum, 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 ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dum, bum bum bum